If you've just joined us, a very heartfelt welcome to all of you. Not warm in physical sense because I'm coming to you from a very cold Pretoria in South Africa, where we have had a cold front move up down from the Cape, and it's really freezing here this morning. So how today is going to work today, we have a very special guest presenter once again, namely Catherine van Heerden. Now, Catherine is quite well known in South Africa. She's had years of experience in coaching, in training, in facilitating leadership development processes, and she's also an author. And Catherine has been, for the last couple of years, she's been developing a model for transformation or for change. Now, I'm not going to say much about that models, because obviously she's going to tell us more about it. And what she agreed on is to share this model with us over the next 2 weeks. And what's really great about it is you can either sit in and just listen, just absorb and just take in what she's sharing, or you can choose to actually participate. So to use this model as we go through these 2 hours today, and again next week, and use it to address issues or if you feel stuck, if you feel that you're not making progress, that you're not transforming as you aspire to, then you can also use it in a practical way. So without any further ado, Catherine, very welcome. Thank you so much for joining us at this time of the morning. You're not far from where I'm based, and I know it's very cold, and to be in the office and to be up and ready and keeping us busy is really appreciated. So over to you, Catherine.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Marnie. And good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for your time this morning, and thank you for joining us. I'm hoping on this cold morning that I can just impart some of my thoughts. I have, during the session last week, I've indicated that you can join in either one of two ways. If you are here with a specific situation or a specific need, or a specific something that you want to think through, then I hope that you have in front of you your own journal, a piece of paper, a pen, to take yourself through a proper thinking process. If you don't have something specific that you want to think through, then you're welcome to sit back and just be an observer of the whole process, and we would appreciate some of your feedback, please. Marnie, everybody should be able to see my presentation. And so just to go and take you through this process, I would like to give you some background. I'm going to do two different things, but let me talk you through the agenda first. We're going to have 2 sessions, all right? That's for today and then next Friday as well. So if it is possible for you, I'm probably not going to be able to take you through the whole model, and that's why we decided to do it through 2 sessions. Therefore, make sure to schedule your for next Friday as well from 9 to 11. And as I've already indicated, it is your choice to either be a participant of this process or sit back and just observe and give us some feedback with regards to what your thinking is of this model. I will be starting off first by giving you some background and context information. And I'm going to share with you also a personal inventory that I've developed to help you with that process, which you may not be able to do right now, but I'm going to direct you to my website to go and download that for free in a moment if you want to, and that you can do over the weekend or next week. Then I'm going to take you through the overview of the model that I have developed, and we're going to start using it, all right? In terms of time, Marnie have asked me to just give a break within about an hour or so, that you can grab a coffee, take a comfort break. And please, if I have been accused of being a slave driver, so if you see that, Carlene, if you see that I'm not doing the time break thing, then please interrupt. And then also, I also represent Dr. Edward de Bono here in South Africa with the training of 6 thinking hats and lateral thinking. I've written a couple of books and co-authored a few others, do executive coaching and counseling quite a lot. have two beautiful boys, 26 and 11 years old, and I can fly a plane. So in terms of some things that I've done, I've developed an online program called See the Change that's also available on my website, and wrote a book that's recently launched on Amazon. The model that I'm going to share with you now is Getting Unstuck, that I have registered and been approved with a university in the UK. Current writing, I'm participating in a book with Forgotten Women, with women of stature, and many more books inside of me that I'm planning to write. The inventory that I've developed, I'm inviting you to go and just look for it at my website. An ebook that I've written to help people lose emotional weight. It's called Dink Yourself Thin, that's in Afrikaans, Thinking Yourself Thin, and contributed with Vanessa Magazine. So, and I'm busy starting a new business as well with a partner of mine. So just getting into it now, we're going to talk about what does it mean to get stuck, and why do we get stuck? And there could be many, many reasons for it. And how can we get unstuck? What is it that we can do differently to get us unstuck? So as I said earlier, this could be for you, or you can think about this in terms of dealing with your own customers and the people that you are coaching. So if we're talking about being stuck, then I've just Googled a couple of meanings for it, and we can see there it's about the inability to move any further. And I suppose that all of us can attest to it, that sometimes in life you're in your personal life, it could be in your marital life, you could be in your romantic relationships, in other words, or it could be with your physical body, it could be from a spiritual point of view, mentally, business, commercially, and all these different dimensions and areas in our lives. Sometimes things happen that get us what I call get stuck in crevices of ourselves or of these relationships. And then it could be that we just remain in that place and we find ourselves that we don't really know how to move forward or backward. And then we make use of defense mechanisms that then actually keep us stuck there. For example, this one lady had asked me to do coaching for her to help her make decisions. And she said to me, Catherine, I need you to help me to cope better. And I worked with this model with her, and then I showed her that she's actually quite masterful in coping with life. And she actually had to learn not to cope, because I believe that when we are in difficult situations, that we sometimes cope so well that is why we get stuck. And so that's something that we also need to think about. So if you are in a stage of your own business and your own life that you feel stuck somewhere, or you're dealing with your clients that ask you to help them make certain decisions, that we've got to understand that sometimes they cope so well that they actually have to unlearn the coping. Remaining fixed in that state, we're standing still, grinding to halt, to be bogged down. And if we think about what are some of the reasons why people get stuck, and I think, you can list so many reasons because of the absolute amazing and the wealth of who we are as human beings. You can attribute it to so many different reasons. But some that I'm listing here is what I have found often is people lack clarity. So they are confused about what they want. And I think that's probably because of the patterns in our brains, our experiences and so on. That's often so many things happening at the same time that it confuses us. And then when you're confused, you don't really always know what exactly you want. And then in that sense, you need clarity in mind. And so that is something that can help us to get unstuck. Lack of focus, so being scattered-brained, inability to identify ways forward. So I may be so confused about what I want that I actually can't see the different pathways that I can follow to go forward in my life. And that's something that we also need to identify what is creating an inability for me to come up with creative ideas. Fear is, of course, a big one. Afraid of the future, afraid of the choices that I make. There's something that I often say to my clients, and that is, when you think about future, and you think about, how do I know that I'm making the right decision for the future? Then we also have to understand that because we are not beings that have full knowledge of the future, you can't always know for sure that you are making the best decisions for the future. So sometimes we have to make faith-based decisions or hope-based decisions, or advisors. People may have advised us, or we may have received coaching from somebody that have helped us to get clarity on certain things. But every single decision that we make, we need to understand that those decisions are, I just want to make sure that I still have connection. I'm looking at some of you at my screen here. All right. So just if I see you frozen, then I know that I've lost connection. So if you make decisions, know that you don't always know what are the best decisions for the future. So you have to trust in your ability to reassess and reassess and reassess. And we have the right to make new decisions. So that's the beauty of change, changing ourselves, changing our environments, and flowing with how life unfolds. I call it surrendering to life. Because what you don't know is going to happen probably. And I rather want to work with my own ability to be agile, to take care of my mind and the condition of my heart, my soul, my spirit, and my environment, because life is going to happen. And when I get stuck somewhere, I know already that I don't know what the right decision as such is, but I do know that I have the ability to reassess and to change. What my past stories are, that could also create people to get stuck because of that fear of a repetition of past failures, possibly. Then asking the wrong questions, like, why did this happen? I don't know if you would agree, but sometimes things happen in life, and we get stuck with asking that question. Why did this happen to me? Why did this happen to me? You know, what I'm thinking, what's the answer that you're hoping to get there? Does it have to be a good explanation that you would then understand and embrace and say, all right, now I get it? No, sometimes we just need to learn to ask the right questions and understand that things do happen, and we do get violated, we do get criticized, we do get rejected. It's part of this, the journey of being called a human, and we've got to embrace those realities as well. So speaking to the wrong people, sometimes I believe that sometimes people listen to the wrong voices in their lives. You know, you are stuck in a situation, and then you phone people that are sharing almost the same kind of pain, and then we stuck together. And so I don't always invite the right voices into my life, where I make sure that those voices actually mobilize me or help me to get clarity. That's extremely important to make sure that, especially
about listening to the wrong, or speaking to the wrong people and listening to the wrong voices. Sometimes I think people also have the challenge that they have people around them, or they're in a situation where people would speak into their lives and they can't really control it. So maybe a parent or a boss or a, you know, somebody with that you're connected to and that you're part of, and I suppose that would be a good question to raise when she's back. But I suppose you have to find ways to deal with that. So it's not always by choice that you have the wrong people speaking into your life.
Moni, isn't also an issue of listening to the wrong people becoming a habit, and you have to sort of break that pattern if you want real change, and you know, listening to yourself is probably something that I find is almost uncomfortable.
Yeah, very true. And the thing is, you know, because of the ways that our brains are wired, when you allow, I mean, people, our identities are formed by a number of things, but it's also constantly confirmed. So if you have the wrong people saying, and they don't necessarily have to say it in words, but if you have people saying and reacting, responding to you in a certain way, then it becomes very difficult, because what you already believe is constantly reaffirmed. And then, Martin, like you're saying, to break that habit is incredibly difficult. Here we go. Catherine is requesting to join us again. I just raised when you mentioned the point about listening to the wrong voices, or having the wrong people speaking to your life. I said something interesting to hear from your perspective is how about people who are in a situation where you have people speaking into your life who where you have no choice. So say a parent or a family member or a boss or somebody that you can't really cut out. Then it becomes even more difficult. And Martin also raised the point then, saying that to shut out that voice, because you're so used to it, and that voice constantly confirms or reaffirms what you already believe.
Yes.
That must be even more challenging, right?
It's extremely difficult. If you're younger, for example, and your parents keep on being present voices in your life that's criticizing you, for example, you're going to start possibly developing a misconception or view of yourself that is hurtful. And a boss or a partner that you're in a relationship with, or a best friend that you trust, I just believe that somewhere in our lives, and that's what's called being an adult, it's very important to somewhere stop in your life and to decide for yourself, who am I? And, get professional help if with the coaches to help you with that process. But that's what I advise people is, I want to hear what people's narratives are. I listen very carefully to their narratives, because it tells me the inward voices as well as the outward voices that have shaped their thinking, their patterns, and their expectations of the future, etc. So sometimes we actually need to reframe those patterns and just solve the problem or change, but first start with what have these voices told you, and also your own voice told you. So what is it that we need to shift there first, before we can go into the next step of solving problems or change? Because inner voices are so critical, and we all know this.
Yeah, very
but it's what you say, if you have people in your life that makes it difficult, it can sometimes be really, really hard to shut out voices. But that's where we also have to teach people or help or advise people, and also manage ourselves to decide what are our own boundaries. And I think that we haven't really learned to draw boundaries. I won't allow a person to speak to me that way. You can't say those. Not accepting it. So that's also, I hope that okay, again, disable to share the screen.
Let me just make very sure that you are, seems I must make co-host again, yes.
Yes, it seems like we're going to maybe do that a few times.
That's okay.
I apologize everyone for the frustration of this, but we're going to have to work with what we can do. So I'm back. Let me just close there. Just want to get my right screen to be shared. This one. I don't know why it's not going to that one now.
I hear all kinds of very, very strange noises.
It's like it's today. It's a strange thing. Trying to share my screen that I was busy with, and I've selected it. So I'm not sure why it's not going to that one now.
Yeah, that is.
It's just very strange.
Maybe just click. sometimes seem when I use the forward button, it sort of gets stuck. But then when I use the mouse on the slides, then it.
Yeah, because this one is not the right screen, but it doesn't want to switch to the other one. I don't know why.
Let's see. Well, we can obviously see your screen.
Yeah, but this is not the right screen, and I'm trying to switch it to the right one. And I'm clicking it, but it doesn't share that one, so I'm not sure why.
Francois, what?
You go here.
Yeah, any suggestions? Oh, here you go.
Can you see there? All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we spoke about the wrong questions, speaking to the wrong people, cognitive dissonance that creates anxiety and stress. We sometimes procrastinate what we know we should do, expectation of failure. So this is where I expect that even if I make certain decisions, I'm probably going to fail at it. And cognitive patterns that set that we don't want to shift out of because it could have created a certain comfort zone for us. And it's like when I work with a lot of people, I don't know if you coaches agree, but I have found often that people get stuck because they create a desire for change, but they don't actually change. Does that make sense? It's like people say, I really want to start a new business, or I really would like to lose weight. I really do want to change the nature of this relationship. And the desire that you creates the illusion that you're solving your problem. And then you get stuck in the desire, but not actually taking action. That's what we mean with cognitive patterns. Lack of self-discipline is a big one. We just don't take the action. And then, of course, poor self-confidence. I don't believe in myself. I'm probably going to fail anyway. And that's very important parts of why people get stuck. So now we can talk about why do we need to get unstuck. But for this purpose, I want to move and shift you to my flip charts. I'm going to give a little bit of an explanation of why it is important to get unstuck, and this is a little bit of a so Marnie, I'm going to go away from this share. You can all see me there in terms of this explanation that I'm going to give. So I believe, can you all see, you can see me there, right?
Catherine, what I want to suggest is unshare stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
And then go into presenter mode or whatever they call it, so we can see you full screen. There we go. That's perfect.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Now, I want to just explain the reason why people get stuck, and that's part of why it's important to understand the model as well. People go through their timeline story, and we know that as you go through life, I hope you can see this very clearly. As you go through life, with the different intervals of your life, there's things happening. So as you get older, there's things happening that we can call these pain points, things that happen that hurt us incredibly. It could be bigger things, it could be smaller things. But as you grow older in your life, let's say that we are now at age 10, 20, 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old plus. The older you get, the more pressure becomes and the more responsibilities we have, right? But what often has happened is we all have stories of certain things that have happened in our lives that have created pain points. And I do believe that as we go through life, little bits of us get stuck in these stories. And that's why when you are 40 years old, you may not be at your fully functional self because little bits of you were left within these stories of your life. Now, you may get at this point and may see where your future is still going, but if little bits of you are stuck in these pain point stories, then we know that by the time that I get to my 60, 70 years old, I'm going to be confronted with the truth of my life story and the things that I haven't resolved, because a lot of my energy is left behind in these pain points. And I believe that's why people get grumpy. That's why we get grumpy old people, because they are not thriving at this end of the line. They are actually angry, resentful, and bitter because they never took the time or had the courage or were vulnerable enough to take care of those stories. Now, and for those of you that do work with pathology or people that really are stuck in deep stories of pain, I mean, I work with a lot of women that have to work through rape. I work with a lot of people that went through a lot of abuse and a lot of rejection. And we know that when we coach, it's not always just about what you want to accomplish in the future. It's also about helping them to reframe, dealing with this stuff sometimes, and it could be very hard. So this is why we need to get unstuck, is if I want to be fully functional, operational, and thrive in my future self, I have to have the courage and the ability to have clarity in mind, to look at all the dimensions in my life and be bold enough and open enough to look at these pain points and work through them. But that's why we have work that we do, and that's why we ask people sometimes to help us. Sometimes it could be very, very hard to do this, of course, especially if it's a real bleeding point that people are going through. And part of the reason of this, of why we have to do this, and I'm going to just write it down here for you, so please take note, is your experiences, each of your experiences, we know this, lead to ways of thinking about ourselves, about other people, about the world around us, etc. This we don't have power over. So everything that happens in our lives where other people externally had exerted influence over our lives and treated us in a certain manner, or were those voices in our lives that made us feel stuck, we don't have much power over these things, but we know that our human power lies in our ability to perceive and to describe and to give meaning to these experiences. So a lot of our teaching or coaching around helping clients is supposed to be about finding out what perceptions are you holding on to that is keeping you stuck. What were the experiences that created those perceptions, and how do these perceptions then also award further meaning to further experiences? And that's an important thing to understand. Perceptions in itself, that creates, again, assumptions that we make about our future, what we expect to happen. So if I have had certain experiences that created pain points that got me stuck, and I started to believe certain things about myself or about the world and other people, I am going to make certain assumptions about what's probably going to happen. And this is also incredibly important because we cannot get away from making assumptions. I don't believe in that statement that says an assumption is making an ass out of you and me. We are human beings. Human beings make assumptions. That's how the brain functions. An assumption is really just a psychological manner of filling in information that you don't know. And it's based on your experiences and your perceptions. That's why it's so important to check assumptions and validate them. That's something that we can do. Assumptions is, again, it creates what kind of attitudes are you going to have toward yourself, toward people around you. And that could be positive, neutral, or negative. And if I say, for example, I want to make decisions about my world, my life, but my attitude is, you know, Murphy's Law is probably going to be a failure anyway. And then that will keep me stuck, to have that attitude towards self or other people, or an attitude of you just don't trust other people. You can never trust other people. And now you contract a coach, but you actually don't fundamentally trust them. And that's also important to understand. People's attitudes come from the assumptions that they make, the belief system that they have, which is based on the experiences. But what is important that I often point out is, I'm going to put this down below so that you can see, is attitude shapes behavior. Attitude shapes behavior. So we can say that behavior is a physical manifestation of that what happens to me in a psychological level, which could be shaped by experiences, but not necessarily. And that is where the power of human beings lie in, is that we can either become, as a result of our experiences, where this leads the experiences, or we can say in spite of the experiences, I still take charge of my perceptions, my assumptions, my attitudes, and then ultimately my behavior. So if we talk about empowering clients in coaching, we need to understand what their experiences were. And if we want to help them to get unstuck, then it means that I have to understand a little bit about those things. And if we're not qualified, of course, to go into the psychology of the pathology of certain things, and generally I'm talking now about, I know this is a difficult or maybe a dangerous term to use, but I'm talking about fairly normal, sound-minded people, okay? I'm not talking about people that are addicts or people that have serious social pathology or people that have serious clinical problems, okay? I'm talking about the normal, sound-minded person that's generally just struggling through life issues that we are coaching or helping. Getting those experiences and understanding what's happening in the mind, what they expect, and so what's happening on an emotional level is often what shapes behavior. Now, something that we need to understand is my behavior becomes experiences for other people. My own behavior becomes experiences for other people. So if I, for example, personally in business, if you're here and you say that I am personally kind of stuck and I really need to get unstuck because I want to start this business or I want to shift, there's some things that I need to change in my own life, then you need to bear in mind that you need to go and reflect a little bit about, but what's my story? Have I had the courage? Have I been personally vulnerable to go into these pain stories? And have I allowed it to bleed out? Because, you know, you can have, this is just, could just be my belief, but I think that if we don't go and resolve that what's got us stuck and kind of steals our energy, that we can't be fully present in our future story. Because there will always be things that will pull us back. There will be insecurities, there will be self-doubt, there will be weight gain or massive weight loss. There would be a lot of creative ideas that will go lost. There will be talents that aren't optimized. There would be distrust of intention of other people. All of those things play a huge psychological impact on the decisions that we make and how we shape our future. I've often said that something that I'm very grateful for, and I say this is the grace of God, but also my own ability to stand with this, is that you can be a victim of your experiences, but you can also be an architect of your future. So past experiences and pain points, each of us have the ability to say, I blame these things, and that's why I can't be fully present. And that would be a very valid place to be in. But when I work with my clients as well, I indicate to them that we all have that choice to make. So you're either going to live with this and not fully thrive in the future self, or you can say, let me have the courage to work with it and get unstuck in order to create that what I want to create for my future. Okay, so I hope this makes sense to you with the flow of it. And especially what I want to land with you right now is, remember, your behavior becomes experiences for other people that you're in relationship with. You can never ever say that I don't care what other people think of me. I really hate that statement. And the reason why I hate it is because we are all in relationship with other people, right? And if I'm in relationship with other people, I should care what they think of me, because their thinking of me is going to make, they're going to have certain assumptions about me. They will then have a certain attitude toward me and then behave toward me in a certain way. And so that's important for me what my clients think of me, what my friends think of me, whomever I'm in close relationships with. It's very important to me what they think of me, because I understand that there's a transaction in that relationship taking place. If I am stuck here still, then that means that I'm going to take less responsibility, less accountability for my behavior. I'm going to blame my stories. And then when I'm an old person, I'm going to be a grumpy old woman that my kids don't want to come visit. And I'm going to have this energy of pushing people away. And then I'm going to be angry that nobody comes to visit me. So that in itself then becomes a problem that perpetuates it more and more and more. And that's why we have to understand you have a responsibility toward yourself to be unstuck in your life. And then if you're helping your clients, that you know how to help them with some of these psychodynamics. Something else that I also want to point out, and then we're going to go into the model, is what is the power of consciousness and subconsciousness and what happens in those fields. And I know that I'm talking to some people that are very seasoned coaches that have worked years and years with people, so you would be familiar with this. If you are very new to the world of coaching and teaching others, then this could be also very insightful for you. We know that on a conscious level, things happen to us. These are those experiences that I spoke about. But then everything that happens on a conscious level, we know very well, is being filtered through and being given meaning. So in order for us to give meaning to things, because that's all that life is about, is how back. What was there, any comments or questions?
Carlene, do you want to just raise those two questions that was posted in the chat box?
Yeah, it was in the chat box. It was not really questions. It was more
Comments.
Observations. Like Francois just said, people are more likely to change because of a deep crisis than to motivate themselves to make a big change. And then Martin added, that is why you should never allow a good crisis to go to waste.
That's a nice comment, yes. Don't let it go to waste. Okay, is there anybody that would like to ask a question at this stage, or is all good still with regards to the flow of all this information so far? Okay, cool. Can I proceed?
I think so, yes.
All right, so I'm busy just explaining these two concepts here. The conscious that we know, with the subconscious, we know that this is all the filing of all of our experiences and so on. And this is the collection of how my own identity, how I give meaning to things, how I see things, and my self-worth, my self-esteem, everything sits here, the collection of all of my experiences. We know this. But something that we don't always understand or think about is on a certain level, my inner man is protecting this at all cost. And I give meaning to all of my experiences through years, filtering through my subconscious state and being. So if I'm stuck here and pain points are still here, or I have certain narratives here that I call my truth, then I know that as things happen to me, if I say, for example, you know, I will probably fail anyway, or I have an expectation, an assumption that life is going to cheat me in some way anyway, then what we don't always think about is our inner man that we call the creative consciousness finds creative ways and solutions to protect this at all cost. It doesn't question it. It doesn't say you're right or you're wrong, or no, I can't accept it, or I don't. Whatever I call here my truth is what will be protected. And so that it could be a reason why we remain stuck in life and why we listen to the wrong voices. Because if I have a low self-worth here, then, and I get a beautiful compliment there, then it is going to create cognitive dissonance, because this picture and this picture is not the same. There isn't congruence here. And that is why we experience noise and why we then have levels of anxiety and stress that kicks in, because this picture isn't the same. But now what happens is my inner man protects what I believe and call my full truth. And so it will find coping mechanisms, defense mechanisms, all different kinds of ways to distort the outer feedback that I get in order to maintain and sustain and protect this, what I call truth. Therefore, if I do coaching for my clients, for example, and I don't first understand what's actually going on here inside of their view of themselves and what's the health levels taking place here, then it could be that I can take them through a coaching process where they don't believe what I say anyway, or they expect to fail anyway, etc., etc. So it's very important that we understand the power of what we can call, draw a little man here, what I call the inner man, the power of the inner man, or the creative consciousness, to protect this state of me at all cost. And I can say this because I've worked with many women with Finesse Magazine over the last 4 to 5 years, helping them to lose weight. And something that I know that I first have to work with is the inner state of them. And there's a lot of narratives that have to be changed first, and a lot of pain points that have to be solved first before their body can manifestate the success that they are trying to accomplish. And we know this is true for business, for marriage relationships, for work, and all the different spheres of our lives. Now, why am I sharing all this with you? It is, if we talk about getting unstuck, it means understanding what's going on here. It's understanding the pain.
Yeah, we just lost Catherine again, so just give it a couple of moments again. Do this whole process also from a neuroscientific perspective of how our brains are really wired to affirm what we already believe. I mean, it's what it comes to, and have certain thinking patterns wired that cause us to experience the world in a certain way. She talked about the conscious mind and what we become conscious of. I don't know if you've seen, there's been some very interesting studies recently on the amount of information that our brains take in through our senses and filter it out to just allow a very, very small portion. It's a 0.00 something percentage of what we actually absorb that we become consciously aware of. So that links very closely to this. So if the wiring is such that it's, that we perceive things as negative or people or ourselves, then that's constantly affirmed because our brains select those, those bits of information that confirms what we already think and what we already believe. And so what she's talking about here is to get to rewire that in a certain sense, to address that. As I think she's struggling now, I don't want, oh, here we go.
Okay, yes. There she goes, yeah.
Okay.
Again, apologies. I want to read for you why it is a good idea to sometimes just sit and think. And I'm sure that most of you that's here have developed the importance, and I've acknowledged the importance of self-reflection. But I've written a small quote that I'd like to just read for you first. It says, "There's wisdom in silence. There's insight in wisdom. There's good decisions in insight. There's movement in good decisions. There's significance in movement, and there's peace in significance. There's freedom in peace. So all you really need is silence. Because when you create silent moments of deep reflection, then you also acquire wisdom, insight, movement, significance, peace, freedom. And therefore, getting unstuck is really about inviting and allowing yourself some time to acknowledge the truth of you, the truth of your situation, and to take yourself through a process of moment to moment to moment thinking of deeper acknowledgement, deeper understanding, so that you can then take responsible decisions which then enables action. I believe that's why people sometimes get stuck, is because they surround themselves with noise, because they can't actually handle the noise inside of them. And so we then avoid and procrastinate, and we remain stuck. We create a desire for change, which creates almost an illusion that we're doing something about our situation. But what we can do is to move specifically and systematically through a process of change and getting unstuck that doesn't feel threatening, and it doesn't feel like we are we're taking ourselves into a breakdown process. All right. I hope that you are ready to join me on that. For the moment, I want to take you to this document. You'll see this document in my on my website, and I've made it available for a free download. What this document is about is it takes you, just go down, it takes you to a process of honesty and vulnerability, and it helps you to really just identify what is your situation. Why can't I scroll down? Just hope you pay page down here. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
It takes you through a process of looking at all the different dimensions of the condition of you, for example, where you first rate yourself, your happiness level, and all different levels of condition, your heart, your mind. I've taken a couple of clients through this. It's very basic, but it helps you to unpack all the different areas in your life and rate it and just think carefully about it. And then when you do that, you enable yourself to identify, where do I perceive that I'm thriving in my life, and where do I perceive that I may be stuck? So if you go through all of this, intimate spaces, and I've created some questions, your social connections, and just thinking about it, your work life, this is something a lot of people get stuck in, where they believe that they have to do this work, but they can't make choices to change there, and it could. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to, so with that particular inventory, go to my website, download it, and take yourself through that process. That is, if you want to know, where do I need to get unstuck in? It's just like a nice overview of different areas, as I've said, and that will help you to take you to the next step. So sharing with you now is the model. So I'm showing you just first the overall process. I have developed this as a result of having worked with a number of people and hearing what's the kinds of narratives, and just realizing what's the kinds of things that I can help with. And I've packaged it into a model, a step-by-step process to help people with regards to getting unstuck. And I'm going to take you through the whole process practically for the rest of now or today, and then next week as well. But just to give you an overview, we will look at the situation, and then as a second step, we will go into understanding more of our emotions around the situation and how long we felt that way. This helps us to identify the intensity and the seriousness of the situation. We will then look into understanding coping strategies that we've used and how long we have been in that situation, which could be the reason why we are stuck in that situation that we define. Then after that, we will ask ourselves, how effective has this coping strategies been for me? And now we move into choices. So here I will explain a predicament to a person and explaining why is it that you have been stuck this way for so long. And then in terms of choices, I would always take the client and say, okay, so let us imagine that there's no change and we actually stay in that situation, because it's still a choice to stay in it. What if there's no change? What would be the implications, short, medium, long term? And what would be the consequence? And then I can still choose not to change, but I know exactly what I contract myself with. And if I choose to stay in that situation and not change, then I also can't complain about, you know, what my realities are, because I've contracted myself to it. I understand that I've contributed myself to it, and I can think contingency. How do I further cope, or what other coping strategies can I use to help me cope with my situation, because I don't want to change my situation. I actually want coaching and helping to cope with it. Then that's good. But then the person knows exactly what they're contracting themselves to. If we say, right, if I don't want this, and I understand the short, medium, long-term consequence and implications, let us say, well, what does it mean if we did change? And it's in exploring the change and getting unstuck is not about I'm making these decisions. It's let me just go into my mind and in seeing what can I identify as a possibility, what could be. So I always would lead them, even if they say, no, I can't change it. Well, let's just explore this path and see what does this mean. So once we say, right, let's explore on a process of change, go back to the situation. Then my next step would be to take them into, right, here's my situation, let's redefine it again. Now I want to understand what is my desired state, why do I want it, and how did that make me feel? So now I'm thinking future. What feeling do I get when I get that picture? And how is that emotion different to the one that I've created here? So I would compare those two. Then after this, I would then go into, right, so if I say this is my desired state, this is why I want that desired state and why it's different to this situation, and I explore the feelings of it, then we go into the creative curiosity of saying, okay, so how I make that happen? This is where ideas are then generated. And I would always say, let's be prolific in our minds. When an idea is raised, it doesn't have to be in its perfect form. When an idea is raised, it's not to say you're going to implement it. It's just in your mind. So let's articulate those ideas and identify them and take more and more. So what else? What else? What else? We don't settle for the first idea. We explore further. We enter into more patterns. And then we then go, right, next step is, okay, so here's our ideas that could help us accomplish the desired state, which will get us unstuck in the situation that we are right now. But let us now understand what paradigm shifts need to take place in order to enable the implementation of these ideas. So I know if I hold on to certain beliefs on a cognitive, emotional, behavioral level. Thank you very much. I must say that I am internally quite frustrated with seeing that people's faces are frozen again. Now I have to jump up again. And it's strange because it does show in my laptop that I'm connected and yet it loses connection. So I'm not sure why that is happening. But let's make use of the time that we have. I am probably going to fall off again soon. I was busy with the cognitive, emotional, behavioral paradigm shifts. The coaches that's on here, that seasoned coaches, would absolutely agree that this is such a critical part of coaching and of helping people and getting unstuck. Because if I have certain patterns or narratives that I fully believe in and call my truth, it's going to be rather difficult to make that shift and to get unstuck. So first, sometimes getting unstuck means getting unstuck in my own head and stop being my own enemy and starting to see the possibilities. I have to ask myself, for example, with some of the ladies that I work with, they may have a paradigm, a cognitive paradigm that says, I am a fat little girl and I always will be. So I've recognized that, hey, no, we've got to change that. We've got to start seeing the value of me and not define myself by my body. We have to define myself by the spirit of me, the person who I am. So that narrative will keep my body in a shape that I may not like. But even if I lose weight, I may go back into, my body may go back into fulfilling that narrative. And that's why it's so important that we first look at what are the beliefs that I have, whatever the experiences were that shaped them, and then say, right, here's the cognitive shifts that I have to make, and also the emotional ones. This is how I feel, but here's what I need to shift into in order to feel, which will, it's from a disempowering to a empowering, from a questioning and doubt to a confident state that helps me to get unstuck. So those first things have to be in place. And then also behavioral. What kinds of actions have I taken, or things have I done that is keeping me stuck? And what behavioral shifts do I need to make? So other actions that I need to take that will more align and resonate with some of these ideas and the desired state that I've identified. Once you have identified those shifts, then we can say, all right, how easy, difficult is it for me? And what is my time frames? And what does that mean for me to make those shifts? Does it mean that I need to do deep dives into the reasons why I have these beliefs? Does it resonate back to the pain points of my storyline? Is it a pathology that has started to develop? What is currently still feeding those beliefs, those narratives? What's still feeding the emotions? What are the voices that I may need to turn down in my own head? I tell people often that actually people's voices are like volume knobs. You can give them lots of volume in your life, or you can turn the volume knob down. They can keep on speaking. You can't say to a person, stop saying what you're saying. People are also free to say what they want to say and to have their opinions. But I have the power to either give that voice a loud sounding inside my own heart and head, or I can turn the volume down and give it less power. That's where my power lies. And that's something that I think is important to realize and recognize. And then, of course, behavioral patterns is, what am I doing that's not serving the change or the desired state, but that I need to shift in order to deal with this situation. Once I have that clarified, I like to then go into back into the situation, because now we've recognized, okay, cool, I can make certain shifts. But now I go into a little bit of a psychology around, okay, let's go into a deeper dive. And I like asking this question. This question is saying, who do you blame for being in that situation in the first place? When I ask that question, I can determine, is the person blaming themselves? Is it an internal, so their locus of control sits inside of them? Or do they blame externally? And how do they see both of that? What's the transaction taking place there? It's such a powerful question to ask, because if I can understand who you blame, then I also know, again, what's feeding these patterns. I can go back into this emotion. I can go back to the defense mechanisms. I can go back to what the thinking that we've done here. But what I do there is I say, right, let's go into a deep dive, identify on a personal level, who do you blame? It's now me. What do you blame about yourself? Your own inability, your own fears, your own beliefs, your own self-doubt that may have happened over the years. Identify and recognize and acknowledge them, that I have allowed cruelty toward myself. And that's my truth. Or I haven't taken myself responsible. I have not done any self-care. I've not taken my own voice serious enough. There wasn't enough self-worth. And that's why I'm stuck in this situation. I don't believe that I can be successful in this business, or whatever the case is. First, identify all three. What on an intimate level? Who do you blame on an intimate level? An intimate level, I would mean people that you either married to or in a relationship with, family, close friends. So that first, second, third layer of people in your life that you trust. Who do you blame there? Parents, maybe. And who do you blame on an environmental level? That is everything that's outside of your control. People on a broader scope, even on a spiritual level. You can blame God for certain things if you believe in him. And you can blame politics. You can blame how the world works. You can blame things that's happening around the globe. So I would then identify, how close do you see these things and where do you see your power line? Then I would take the person through, right, from a personal, the blaming. What do you want to do with that blaming? Do you want to hold on to it? Is that something you want to keep on believing? Or do you want to shift that? What do you want to do with that blame? On an intimate level, is there forgiveness that needs to happen there first before you can get unstuck? There may be some forgiveness on an intimate level that needs to take place. And forgiveness doesn't mean that you allow that same behavior again and again and again. It just means you release that what keeps you stuck. And on an environmental level, understand that certain things you don't have power over. Even if you blame it, we don't have power in certain things that's happening around the world. So you can either just surrender to it and make it part of your ability to manage and cope with certain things that you can't manage. So we make sure that we understand that. Once we have all that, now I may go back to this area and say, right, so is there a possibility of changing? Let's go back to some of those ideas, to shifts, etc. So all of this that we've done, we then go into, right, what action do we need to take? And then we identify specific things that need to take place. And then lastly, we need to embed success. This is how we're going to sustain what we've identified. And here I would ask the person, what do you stand to gain? If you do implement certain things and the actions you take, what do you stand to gain into the future? How does this connect to that desired state? What can you anticipate as challenges that may take place? So you may run out of money, or some people may criticize you, or people may not agree, or whatever. People may say that this will never work, or whatever may be a challenge for you. Identify it, anticipate it, and then also think about how will I respond to it should it happen. You prepare yourself already for those voices coming. And then how do you discipline yourself? So in terms of, I may not be disciplined enough to do certain things. So how can we help you set up an accountability to be disciplined in that area? Okay. So Marnie, that is the model theoretically. And I thought to just give you an overview so that you can see what it is about. I've given the background with regards to why is it important to sometimes just create a moment of silence where you say, in my silent moments, I will gain wisdom, I will get insight, I will make good decisions, there will be movement, and then there can be change. I've also spoken about the timeline. I've spoken about the things that all of us, each and every one of us, can attest to having had pain points in our own lives. And that's what makes us powerful coaches sometimes, right? Because we can resonate, we can walk a path with people, because we actually understand and can have empathy with them. That's what I think makes us powerful. But if we can also add to that in our coaching for ourselves or for our clients, follow a systematic process to help them think things through very carefully, then we just really help them and ourselves with how can I serve my client better, because I identify certain areas better, but also I get them to become unstuck better by getting clarity, by acknowledging truth, by know what to give up, by identifying future state, by coming up with ideas, making shifts, giving up blame, looking for action, and then sustaining it into the future. All right, so it's about 20 to 11 right now. I'm going to allow for a question or two first. If anyone want to ask a question, I don't know, Colleen, if there's any questions or comments in the chat room. And then I'm going to, for those of you that then want to do a practical state, the rest of it is going to be practical, and next week's going to be very, very practical. I wanted to just cover the theory first, because if you just jump into the model and you don't understand the reasons for why we do it this way, then it may be with less insight. Good. So anybody want to ask a question, and then I'm probably going to be able to take you through just this beginning. That's what we planned for today, just the beginning of it, to look at the situation itself, and then next week we're going to move into the rest of it. Anybody want to ask or say?
Goodness. Okay, so Catherine, oh, sorry. Please carry on. I lost the chat, so please carry on.
I don't have a question. I'm just asking if Catherine can just show the first page of her flip chart while other people are talking. I just want to copy some things from the flip chart. Thanks.
I'm moving my So with a flip chart, what I've explained here is we have a timeline. Age catches up on us. And then as age catches up on us, we have certain things that that create more pressure, more responsibility. And then because of things that happen in our timeline, we can often get stuck, and that creates certain perceptions, certain assumptions, and certain attitudes within us that then shapes our behavior. And then we create certain experiences for other people around us that could cause them not to thrive. And that can cause abusive relationships and all sorts of pathology in our relationships. Bernice, did you see that? Was that good?
Thank you. Yes, I got it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Pleasure.
Catherine, Flores.
Okay.
Flores, yes.
Sorry, Tabiso, you want to go first?
No problem. You can go. You can go.
Okay, thanks. Catherine, you were on your second flip chart, you were talking about the conscious and of course the subconscious. Now, my question was, how do you get into the subconscious, or is that where your model comes in, or do you have another way of reflecting the subconscious of people?
Well, with the inventory that I've created, that's also accessing into the subconscious because you are looking at all of those holistic dimensions. And Ntambu, is it Natabu? She spoke about holistic coaching last week, right? And that is about that full picture of the person.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. And that's so important because we know that all of these aspects of us are connected to each other to a great degree. And so how do we access subconscious is by asking deliberate questions that activate certain experiences and certain patterns of thinking of self, others, and the world around us. So by asking those questions, we invite people into their subconscious wellness. The way that people answer questions, the way they rate certain areas, or the way that they may even have distortion in how they describe this area and that area. You know, if you're a seasoned coach or psychologist, then you would know how to pick up disconnections or certain ways how people see things. You can pick up, but here you said this and here you said this, so that tells me something is happening in your subconscious state that I need to maybe just highlight, explore a little bit more of. Tabiso?
Yes, thank you, Catherine. So I understand, obviously, you kind of gave us a background into what the process that you're going to take us through. So is this something that you generally do with your clients to kind of give them an idea of what to expect?
Yes, I would not give them this whole process first like I did with you. I thought, let me give it first just take you through the model so that you can see what the model is about as a bigger picture, because you are coaches, most of you. With a client, I would use first just an inventory like the one that I've created. Or have a general conversation with them to pick up where are you at, how do you see things, what is your need, typically any other process that anybody would use in coaching, by making then a diagnosis of, so where are you at in your life right now? And if I see that a person is stuck, and they really can't make a decision this way or that way, do I need to change or not, then this is the model that I would use. I would not always use only this model. If I diagnose there's a need for a person to make a responsible decision, even if it is to stay in their situation, at least I would help them to see possibility, because sometimes now isn't the right time to implement something. You know, you could be stuck in a situation and you may know, I have to change it, but it's not the right time right now. We've also got to understand seasons of life. Not the right time to change now, but I know I'm going to. So let me start with a thinking process and start preparing myself psychologically, emotionally, and cognitively, and start giving up blame in order to empower me to make that choice, maybe in a year's time or 2 years' time, or whatever the situation is. So when do I use it with clients? When they need to get unstuck. How do I use the process? I don't tell them up front, this is the entire model. I will take them systematically, question to question to question. So I'm at the moment busy to develop that model into a journal for example, and to give a person, well, here's a journal. And even in many different situations, you know, you can even take yourself through that process of questioning, because it's a very systematic and a sensible question format, if you will. Does it answer your question, Tabiso?
Yes, it does. It does. It does. I'm just really curious. The process itself, would you say it's a process to help somebody who doesn't even know that they're stuck to become aware that they're stuck, and somebody who's aware when, you know, that they're stuck to know where they are at the moment, their current reality? Awesome. Awesome. Love it. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Asking that question means that you have recognized that, that you can see that, you know, sometimes, I don't know how many of you can attest to it, but sometimes people do know they need somebody to help them, but they don't know what for. They just know they're in a state of anxiety or stress. They have a lot of dissonance and their life doesn't flow. They don't feel like in a state of flow. And so they may raise their hand and say, please, I need help. But I don't know what with. And that's where the inventory is so useful, because then you kind of explore all the different dimensions. And then we say, right, it seems that here or there, that's the pain points. And depending on how a person described their situation, I could then say, well, it seems to me like you're stuck. Or it seems to me this or this is your, that's what we would do the diagnosis. I see somebody's hand was raised.
Oh, it's Berenice.
Hi, Catherine. I was waiting to give somebody else a chance, but if there's nobody else waiting, this is my question. I see that you have a doctorate, but I'm not sure what your doctorate is in. And the reason I'm asking is that sometimes you get requests for help from people, and even as is coming through in your presentation, you see that they have, it requires some kind of psychological assistance.
Yes, yes.
And I'm always careful, you know, when I see that, okay, maybe there's some psychology involved. Although I'm highly trained, I'm not a psychologist.
Yes.
And ethically, sometimes I say, you know, I'd love to help you, but this requires some kind of psychology support. So how do you make that call as a coach when you realize, okay,
Berenice, sorry, I think we've lost Catherine again. Catherine, are you there? No. Sorry for that. Halfway through your question, we lost the connection. Maybe somebody else wants to respond to that.
But I'm not saying, this is just my opinion and my view. As a coach, I don't work, I don't do any therapy, or I don't do any therapeutical work. The moment that you have to go into someone's past, you're not doing coaching, you're doing therapy. I know there's a broad range of coaches that actually do therapeutical work as well, but I don't. I focus on the future. I focus at working towards a destination. This is just the way I work.
Okay. I remember, sorry,
Mani,
continue.
I would just, I also understand that, but I'm trying to figure out, how do you know when you know, either get approached by the client or you start going into a few sessions and then you realize, okay, this is actually requires more psychology therapy. How, you know, how do you handle that? Yeah.
Thank you for that one. My perspective, there would be two things. The one is, I remember last week, those of you who attended Nubuntu's session on holistic coaching, because she's also a clinical psychologist, and she said she doesn't mix the two up. So if she's coaching a person, Nubuntu that is, if she's coaching a person and there's a need for a psychologist, then she would not move over into that role. So she would refer the person, even though she is a psychologist herself, she would rather refer the person to a psychologist. So not to mix the two up. So that was last week. That was her response. Catherine, maybe I could just summarize what Berenice asked. She asked if somebody comes to you, or you take on a client and you realize that this person has a need for more than coaching. So how do you manage that?
It's a very dangerous ground, if you're working with people with serious pathology, and as I spoke about those pain points, and they need coaching, but they are stuck, but the reasons for the stuckness is because of psychological deep damage or wounds, then I would also absolutely recommend that you refer a person to a psychologist to help them, and a psychologist can refer to a psychiatrist if there's a diagnosis that they need medication. So Bernice, your question was, what is my PhD in? It is in psychology. I did social and cognitive psychology, as well as psychology and interdisciplinary studies. So it's very, very important to make sure that you help your client in the right way. And once a psychologist has in help with pathology or deep wounds, then let them come back to you with regards to decisions that they need to make with regards to their life, their relationships, or so, coaching and that. But I think, if you're a seasoned coach and if you care about your client, then you would make sure to test or check in with them with regards to what they also need and require. And if you have a lot of experience in that help people in certain things, then by all means, let's help people where we can. But if you recognize that this is an area that you'd like not to treat rather, then always just make sure that you have one or two references of good psychologists.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Just have that reference and let them still make the choice whether they want to do that or not.
My question then, Catherine, is using this model and this approach.
Yes.
Is it, for somebody who's not a psychologist, would you still recommend this because those pain points do deal with psychology? So would you still recommend this on general people who are not?
Yes, absolutely. I've used this model with people that are stuck in life. For example, they just lost energy. They don't feel motivated to go to work anymore, or they feel like their life has no meaning, or they feel like they're just disconnected in their lives. So they're not real deep wounds or anything. It's just they don't have a vision anymore. So then that is what, let's define your situation and let's explore. And I think then as you explore, even with this model, you may then be able to say, well, it sounds to me like here are certain things, the way that you describe it. It sounds to me like there may be some struggles that you have in a psychological level. May I recommend that you address that with a professional? And if that's the case, then hold the process and let them do that first. But, sometimes you work with clients that are actually quite okay. They just need somebody to help them get clarity on the kind of business that they need to create, or in their own personal lives, maybe lose weight, or maybe start something exciting, or maybe just energize them. So I would say absolutely, and as you go through the process, then just be very intuitive and insightful with regards to how you advise the person to go forward.
Right. Okay. Someone else question?
Bonnie, I just want to tag on to what Catherine said there. And if you build good relationships with some psychologists or psychiatrists, they will often also refer clients to you as a coach, where they see the need to move the client into a destination into the future as well.
Yes. Yeah, because, even in situations where I've worked with clients that sometimes they ask for coaching, but then in a conversation, I realized their son has passed away a year ago. So they're stuck in that pain. And I switch, because I can do that. So I say, well, now we've got to do counseling. This is not coaching anymore. This is counseling now. So now we've got to look at dealing with that pain first before we can identify and build on leadership further. We need to let that bleed out first. But as you say, Francois, if sometimes psychologists work with coaches and sometimes coaches work with psychologists. And that's a good thing, especially if you're working with people with that's tender and fragile in a certain time in their life. But if they're not, by all means, we think future and we help them into moving into that future. Okay.
Catherine, I have a question. Model, maybe it's a sort of a practical question. Can you show us a model again? I want to just ask you about the deep dive. So when you come to the deep dive stage, you also mentioned that you can determine at that stage, or you should be able to determine the person's modus of control, or locus of control rather.
Yes, yes.
If a person has a very strong external locus of control, how difficult in your experience, how difficult to shift that, because they always default back to that, and
Yes.
that's another why they stuck in the first place.
Yes, I
you
like
find
that
that
question. Yes, very much so. My own deduction of that is that they may not want to take the accountability of understanding what they personally also accountable for, and it may be that they're not ready, or it may be that they don't want to acknowledge certain things. And it may be that sometimes we as coaches or psychologists need to move them into that space. But if I see a person have a high sense of external locus of control, and they say, but I've done nothing wrong and I have no play here. It could be true. And, it's not just about them saying it. There's a whole lot of things that they may be saying that make you see they're actually right. This is an external thing, and it does definitely sit there. And then acknowledge that. But if they just put everything as an external thing, then they blame everything externally, and they just simply don't see their part in playing it. I would go into certain explanations of how we co-create our realities often. The role that the environment has played, but what you have allowed. Like I had to in my own life, I had to at one point say, but I'm allowing certain stuff happening. And I'm just responsible, because if I wasn't present in this situation and I allowed certain things to happen, then it wouldn't have if I disengaged. But I engaged with it. So I also have a role to play in co-creating my reality. So I'm also to blame. And then that's where a person can then see, I have to do something with that blame, shame that I have, or whatever, and I need to also look at that, what sits externally, and get closure on that internal and external, as well as environmental places where the blame sits, so that I can integrate properly and then allow myself and give myself actually permission to move forward. And I think that's one of the reasons why people get stuck. They don't give themselves permission to change. I'm so ashamed actually of certain things that I'm not worthy enough for this anyway. And sometimes they don't even realize it. It happens on a subconscious level. And that goes to what Floris asked earlier. How do you dig into it? By asking questions. People say often they like these questions. They ask questions, but I ask, do you answer them? The power that line asking the question. Asking the question just directs attention, but it's with answering the question that insight unfolds. And dissonance is created where you then say, do I want to change this or not? And then again, you have full choice to say, I don't want to change, but they know what you're signing up to and what's the reasons. If a client would say to me, I'm not changing, I can't let go of the blame, I feel ashamed, I am not worthy, and that's okay, I will use these defense mechanisms, then that's also good. That's what causes, that's why we're adults. We can make our own choices, and we have the freedom to do that. If you want to stay stuck, then stay stuck, but understand what you're contracting yourself to. If you want to get movement, then identify what you want to move to, and in order to do it effectively, what are the shifts that need to happen, and also what blame do you need to give up?
Yeah, thank you. Very good. Someone else? We sort of just over the hour, but still a minute or so if you want to ask a question, raise a point.
Lewis again here. Catherine, is it possible to have those reflective categories of yours? You said you will refer us to the website.
Yes. I want to suggest, Marnie, so because we're into the practical side now, but I think it's that we first just created a nice context for it, seen a theoretical of it. I really want to take you into a practical as well. Flores, thank you for asking the question. May I ask for those of you that do want to participate practically in this model and see for yourself how it works, that you go into my website, and we'll put it into the chat room.
Yeah.
That's www.catherinevanheerden.com. If you go onto my website, see that there's a click that you go onto courses. And in fact, I think my designer did add the inventory. There's part of my home page if you go into it. But if you go into my website and you search a little there, you'll see that there's it says a personal inventory free download. So you can go into that, you can do a free download, and you'll see that it's a couple of pages where all those dimensions are at and all those questions are asked. So you can print it out for yourself. Take time for this week, go and do that for yourself and just see where are you at in your own life, and see also how can you use that, even refer that to some of your clients, because there's a couple of nice questions in there. Then once you've done that in this week, then we meet Friday again. And I want you to then identify, before we start our session, what is your situation? And please consider that from a holistic point of view. Include your thinking regarding, is it something that I'm in a situation that I'm stuck inside of myself? So it's my own personal wellness here. Is it something that relates into your romantic relationship, your marriage maybe, or your partnership? Is it something that sits with a friendship, in business, with your clients? Is it something that sits with you in your future view of yourself as your own future self that you see when you're 60, 70, 80 years old? Where don't you see real good flow happening in your own life at the moment, that you feel that there's no movement, that you are stuck possibly? Identify that and then come to the session next week with that situation on the top of your mind. And then we're going to go through the model very practically. I'm going to do it very slowly. I'm going to dive into each question, what it means, and we're going to go into the coping strategies that I've identified as important, or the most used coping strategies, to help you identify which ones do you use a lot and which ones do you want to hold on to, which ones you want to give up. And then go through that process to help you just make some decisions for yourself, even if it is future use. For those who don't want to do the model personally because you're not stuck anywhere at the moment, then go through us with a model anyway, maybe with a situation that you know that you help clients typically with. There's a lot of business situations, so you complete the process with me on behalf of them, looking at typically this is what the thinking process could look like from that perspective. Or again, you may just sit in and see what we're doing through the process and how much sense it makes to you. Is that good?
Yeah. Yes, very good. So if we can have that, maybe Caroline, if you wouldn't mind, can you maybe post that link to Catherine's website in the chat? Catherine, I'm conscious of the time. It's 10 past the hour.
Yes.
There's a question that's quite interesting that Renee raised. This is, please briefly explain the concept of self-sabotage. I don't know if that's a wide...
Nice.
Yeah.
I like questions like that. I can spend a whole day on that, sure. The whole concept of self-sabotage is, let's say that it sits fundamentally within the essence of self-belief that I am not worthy. And again, it comes to pain points. Probably in childhood, there's definitely a childhood story where people that should have been protective of you have maybe crossed the line in some ways. So that has created a distorted view of self. And that we know that's the reality of so many people, where they have really, really deep hurts because of serious violations, and sometimes lighter violations that also have very serious impacts for them individually. Once we have an essential belief of worthlessness, then we don't think that we are worthy of stepping into certain forms of success. And we have that belief of what people call Murphy's Law, and they say, you know, but these things will happen to me. It's like an expectation. And so because we create that energy inside of ourselves and that emptiness inside of ourselves, we project it to the outside of ourselves. I often say that your inward person will all that manifest in your outward presence. The reality what you see of yourself inside of you will find a way to manifest itself outside of you. That's what congruence is all about, and that's what your inner man does. So if I do self-sabotage inside of me through the narratives that I hold, then the chances are very good that I will also sabotage relationships and opportunities that come my way, because they will have a distorted filter through which I see it. It's distorted, the filter is distorted. And so I see it in a way that is a truth for me, but not necessarily the truth. So how do we help self-sabotage? It's not about an external, you know, you have to see possibilities. It's really about, let's go back into you and have an intimate moment where we see into you and identify and diagnose what's created that self-sabotage and what is needed to make that shift and to heal that. And that I've seen happen over and over and over again, where people heal and then suddenly their lives just start to flourish. And it's beautiful to see and to witness. And some of you may also have testimonies of that as well, like I do. So it's a very good question. Thank you for asking that. But that's such a deep conversation actually to have. Any factors revolving it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I can imagine that you can have a whole, like you said, a day's discussion on all the different.
It's the beauty of us as human beings, the complexities. Yeah. I always say it's nice to be, you can be complex, but just don't be complicated. We are complex human beings. The intricacies of how we created is marvelously made, but our emotional experiences of things make life complicated. And then we complicated human beings that weigh down on ourselves and other people. And then the energy gets lost. So be complex, but deal with the complications.
Yeah. Yeah. Catherine, thank you so very much. Carolina has posted that link to the website. I'll keep the meeting live for another couple of minutes just so that everyone can follow that link. Guys, I really encourage you, if you haven't done so yet, go onto Catherine's website and download that document and take some time, maybe over the weekend, to reflect on that and to work through that inventory. And so prepare yourself for next week to be back here, and then we get into the practical stuff. I look forward to personally. Catherine, again, thank you so much. And also well done on your perseverance in getting
yes.
when the technology, because I know it's really frustrating when you're getting interrupted like that, and
yeah.
you try to keep your thoughts on your topic, and then you have to deal with that, right?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Everyone who's still here, thank you for joining us again today. And I hope I'm sure you have taken as much from this as I have. And I really look forward to next time. So have a great Friday, cold. I think it's time for this is sort of a soup evening, definitely not drying. So stay warm and have a good weekend as well. Catherine, we're looking forward to seeing you again next week.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marty.